Good evening, black people and all allies fighting for black liberation, black prosperity, and black joy. I'm Charles Blow, and welcome to Prime. The Texas State Senate has approved a new congressional map that would significantly dilute black and brown vote. The Republican-led Senate has redrawn the congressional map to add 2 districts where white voters make up the majority. The number of districts where Hispanic voters make up the majority would be reduced from 8 to 7, and there would be 0 districts where black voters are the majority. The maps also created fewer districts where voters lean Democratic. This would make it increasingly difficult for Democrats to narrow the Republican majority in the state delegation. The map would also draw Representatives Sheila Jackson Lee and Al Green, 2 of the most tenured House members from the Lone Star State, into the same district. They both testified against the changes, but the Senate was not swayed. Earlier this evening, I had the opportunity to speak with Representative Al Green about redistricting and the future of voting in Texas. Representative Green, thank you for joining us tonight. So your district and Representative Sheila Jackson Lee's district have been drawn together basically in the redraw of Texas's congressional districts. Tell us how that happened and what impact that's going to have.
Well, let's start with one impact that it won't have. Representative Jackson Lee and I, we're friends, and we have met and we've agreed that we will not allow what is desired by those who drew the lines, in my opinion, and that is to have us pitted against each other. We won't allow this. We will not run from the same congressional district. This is something that is onerous because in the state of Texas, the growth was among the minority population, about 95% of the growth, in fact. The state grew by about 16%. In fact, the growth in Texas was larger than some 20 states in the United States of America because our growth was about 4 million. And there are more than 20 states, actually, with populations that are less than 4 million. So we have this circumstance wherein the growth is among minorities, and we don't get the minority representation that we richly deserve. And we have 2 congresspersons from the same area, one from the 9th, that would be me, and Congresswoman Jackson Lee from the 18th, with her home being drawn into the 9th congressional district. She also has lost the benefit of the district office that she has because that's not in the 9th congressional district, that's in another district. This is something that we will challenge, and we have to challenge it because it is an injustice. And there are many people who expect us to allow the injustice to persist quietly, but we won't. We've already. Let
me ask you how do you challenge? How exactly do you challenge it? Because the Republicans control the state legislature, they control the governor's mansion. How do you challenge it? It looks like it's marching to his desk.
Well, you have to lay a proper predicate, and we've started that by having maps introduced that could have made the changes, and they were rejected. And the chairperson of the committee introduced a map that would have put Congresswoman Jackson Lee's home back into the 18th congressional district, but then withdrew that map. So we know that it doesn't have to be the way it is. But we also understand that.
Why do you think it is the way that it is? Representative Green, why do you think it is the way that it is? Is it just the Republicans trying to lock in their majorities for another decade? Or is it something more malicious going on with you and Representative Jackson Lee's district? Is this malice? Is this intentionally trying to get rid of one of you 2?
Well, it is the equivalent of political malice aforethought. If you look at what happened, you have no other districts in the state of Texas where 2 persons from the same party are pitted against each other, except Jackson Lee and Al Green. And the 2 of us happen to be persons of color. So persons can draw their own conclusions. But we do live in a world where it's not enough for things to be right, they must also look right. And this clearly does not look right. I was indicating to you that we'll take it to court. I understand that we've lost the benefit of Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act, but there's still Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. And it makes it a bit more difficult. The burden of proof is a little bit more tough. It's tougher for us to sustain. But we believe that we have enough facts, and we're going to take it to court, and we believe that we can prevail.
With the federal voting rights legislation that is now pending, we don't have no idea if it's going to actually make it through the Senate as it is, or if at all. But as written right now, would it somehow change back your districts or change the districts in Texas in any way?
Well, if we had the benefit of the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, which is pending, passed it in the House, pending in the Senate, if we had the benefit of it, we would have the pre-clearance provision that would not allow Texas to make such a draconian change without pre-clearing with the Justice Department. That pre-clearance division, which was in Section 4B, was declared unconstitutional in 2013 when the Holder case was taken before the Supreme Court. And that case, of course, Shelby versus Holder, was a 5-4 decision. Bad decision, but a case that we have to live with. So we will take the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and hopefully pass it. We're working to do that. If we pass it, we can get some protections.
So Representative Green, what happens though if Texas, approves these maps, the governor signs off on these maps, pre-clearance is, getting permission before it happens. It will have already happened. What happens if it is signed into law, accepted and approved these maps? Is there no recourse to go back other than through the courts?
Yes, well, through the courts is meaningful recourse, and we will take it through the courts. That is something that we've always concluded we can do, and we shall. And while it is not as easy to prove that the invidious discrimination took place, it can still be done. And we believe that we have a good lawyer. We have Attorney Gary Bledsoe. He is the counsel for not only us, but he also is the state NAACP president. And there are other lawyers that are advising us as well. So we believe we can prevail, but we do have to fight. And we will have to fight until we get it to the Supreme Court. And hopefully this Supreme Court will see that two African Americans, the only two people to be pitted against each other from the same party, that there's something about that that would require a deeper inquiry. And I think that once we look into it further, we'll find that this is an injustice that should be corrected.
Right. Let's speak a little bit more broadly. Texas, like some other, particularly southern states, some other states out west, but also many southern states, is seeing an influx of people of color, both Hispanic and a reverse migration of black people to the south. What Texas is showing us is that the majorities in power at the time will just take that power that the minorities would otherwise have got for themselves and use it for the existing status quo. So if they're writing drawing more districts that are going to be majority white, reducing the number that are going to be minority Hispanic, and not going to have a single black majority district in Texas, how do you break out of this? If they lock in their majorities with these maps this time, they'll be, presumably in control to draw the next set of maps, regardless of who moves into the state of Texas.
A number of answers to this, and it's an excellent question that you posed. The first thing that we have to realize is that the Republicans did redistricting at a time other than at the 10-year mark. So if we take control of the House in Texas and the Senate in Texas, and we're fortunate enough to elect a governor, then we can correct this injustice, because it is an injustice. And also, we understand. Wait,
you can draw maps at a time other than the census time?
Yes, sir.
Is that what you're saying? I didn't understand what you were saying.
I said yes, sir. I said it has been done in Texas. It has been done. So okay. we won't have to wait. If we're going to have people register, they're going to have to vote, and they're going to have to realize that a lot is at stake, and they can see what's at stake now. This is becoming a cause that exceeds the boundaries of the 9th and the 18th congressional districts. People across the state are talking about it. Indeed, people across the nation are talking about it. And I believe that with this cause receiving the attention that it's receiving, we'll get some additional help at the next election here in Texas. And I think ultimately the ballot is where it can be resolved, at the ballot box. But I want to mention one other point.
Do you? Go ahead.
In Texas, let's make this point, and I'll do it quickly. In the state of Texas, you're right about the influx of persons coming in. But Texas has been a bad actor for a long time. Texas is the state that had white primaries, meaning black people, people of color, could not vote in the primary. Right here in Houston, Texas, a dentist named Lonnie Smith filed a lawsuit that went all the way to the Supreme Court so that Texas could understand that you cannot have all white primaries. And then Texas went to white pre-primaries. So this is not unusual for Texas. This is just the latest iteration of voter suppression and an opportunity to use its power to maintain power.
Very quickly, do you believe that you will be able to resolve this before the midterms, or do you believe that you will end up having to run against Representative Jackson Lee in November?
I think that we still have hope that the House of Representatives in the state of Texas will give us some relief. The House of Representatives has not drafted their map. And if the House has a map that's different from the one that the Senate has, then there will be a conference committee, and then something out of that conference committee will go to the governor for his signature. If they can't reach any conclusions, we may end up, as we did last time, with the court drawing the maps. And under no circumstances will we see Congresswoman Jackson Lee and I running against each other, because we've said that we won't do it. She and I have both publicly indicated that we won't run against each other. We're not going to run from the same congressional district.
Representative Al Green, thank you so much for your time tonight. Good luck in your fight for this. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me. God bless.